Well, a very good morning, and apologies for the lateness, but it's worth reading that document before we get into it. Welcome to Wychavon District Council and our licensing subcommittee for the 25th of April. My name is Robert Raphael, and together with Judith Ciotti and Liz Turier, we will be determining the hearing this morning. We are also helped and assisted by Jenny Ajar. Jenny is from Wychavon's legal department, and Niall I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you. Niall.
It's McManaman.
Thank you. He's from WRS, the Worcestershire Regulatory Services, and we are all kept in order by Mel Harris behind us, who keeps our minutes. If you'd like to see a copy of those minutes, Mel is your go-to for that. Mel, apologies for absence.
Thank you. We have no apologies for absence.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest from members or officers? I see none, thank you. And then item 4 is the licensing the subcommittee hearing procedure notice. These are on page 5 to 6 of your agenda pack, and it's basically how we will conduct our meeting this morning. So straight on to business then, shall we? And item 5, the Licenses Act 2003, consideration of an objection of a temporary events notice. This is page 7 to 34 of your agenda pack this morning. Now.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is the consideration of an objection to a temporary event notice. So the purpose of the report today is to consider and determine whether to serve a counter notice in respect of a temporary event notice served in order to authorise licensable activities being proposed to take place in a field belonging to Stone Arrow Farm in Peopleton, Worcestershire. So a copy of the temporary event notice and supporting documents that were submitted alongside the notice are all attached to Appendix 1. That's on page, or rather that's at page 11 of your report pack. So you will see the actual application itself, and also Mr. Delaney has taken the time to put together what can only be described as an event management plan. So it's an event management plan detailing how his event is going to be arranged and managed with all of the details attached. Mr. Delaney has also submitted some additional papers this morning, Chair, as you're all aware, which hopefully you've all had a chance to read now, which again go on to amplify and support his application. So some background to the application. So on the 11th of April this year, a temporary event notice application was received from Mr. Delaney in respect of licensable activities being proposed to take place in the field belonging to Stone Arrows Farm in Peopleton. It was served in accordance with the relevant legislation and regulations, and the required fee was paid. So basically it was served correctly. The premises user seeks approval for licensable activities as follows. And there's a list of the licensable activities, and it's the sale of alcohol, regulated entertainment and late night refreshment, starting on the 2nd of the 5th and finishing on the 5th of the 5th of this month. The premises identified in the notice is not currently authorised to be used to conduct licensable activities. So basically, there are no other authorisations in place for the location. And Mr. Delaney has described the nature of the event as a solar power showcase event, staged with large bands, bars, cafes and camping. So, Chair, members, in response to the temporary event notice, an objection was received from the police. That was on the 14th of April, and again within the required timescales. And it was received from PC Gibbs, who is here today and is ready to address the committee when it's appropriate. The objection notice from the police has been submitted on the grounds of the licensing objectives of 1, public safety, and 2, the prevention of crime and disorder. And it is attached again to the report at Appendix 2, and I believe that is page 31 onwards. In relation to temporary event notices, only the police and environmental health are responsible authorities, and on this occasion environmental health have seen the application, have been in dialogue with Mr. Delaney, and have not chosen to put forward a representation or an objection on this occasion. So they are satisfied with the information that has been provided. Any time prior to the hearing, any relevant persons, with the agreement of the premises user, can modify the temporary event notice by making changes to the notice. The objection notice should be treated as having been withdrawn from the time the temporary event notice is modified. So there hasn't been any agreement to modify this temporary event notice. So even with the dialogue, there hasn't been any agreement to modify it, which is why it's here today with the objection. So we have our local policy considerations. You must have regard to the council's statement of licensing policy, and it is available on the website and available to download. I'll run through the legal implications, and Ms Agar's here should there be any questions in relation to those. The committee is obliged to determine this application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives. So those licensing objectives are listed. It's the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. On this occasion, you can discount the last two because the two objections that have been raised, the two matters that have been raised in the objections are the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety. So we are here to consider those two matters. So in making your decision today, you're also obliged to have regards to the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act. And I've already mentioned the Council's statement of licensing policy. You must have regard to the representations which are made, and that's both by the police and also by Mr Delaney himself as the notice giver. So once you've considered everything, we've had the opportunity to hear from all parties, you must then go on to take such following steps which you feel are appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. And those options are, you can decide to serve a counter notice, or decide not to serve a counter notice. So it's one or the other. Simple choice. If a counter notice is served, then the licensable activities shown in the temporary event notice would not be authorised. So they are not officially authorised. If a counter notice is not served, then the activities described in the notice will be authorised to take place. It's as simple as that. Subcommittee is asked to note that it may not decide to serve a counter notice merely because it considers it desirable to do so. It must actually be appropriate in order to promote the licensing objectives. So you must go on to consider the objection in line with the licensing objectives. All parties to the hearing must be notified of the subcommittee's decision along with the reasons for that decision. So should a decision be made to issue a counter notice, then full reasons must be given in the notice and they will be provided to all parties. In accordance with the provisions of Part 3 of Schedule 5 of the Licensing Act 2003, where the licensing authority gives a counter notice under Section 105, the premises user may appeal against that decision. Where the authority does not give a notice, the relevant person who gave the objection notice also has the right of appeal against the decision. In both cases, appeals must be made to the Magistrates' Courts within 21 days of receiving the official notification of decision. However, no appeal can be brought less than 5 working days prior to the first day of the proposed event. The hearing should be conducted in line with the agreed procedures, and we all have a copy in the report back. So for decision today, Chair, members, you must consider and determine whether to serve a counter notice in respect to the temporary event notice. Those are the matters before you today. I'm happy to answer any questions, should you have any.
Niall, thank you. Are there any questions for Niall before we move on? No, thank you. Mr Delaney, is that you, sir? Are you Mr Delaney? Hello, welcome. Would you like to take us through your temporary event notice and the notes you've provided this morning? I'm being given counter advice. Yes. Please object us. Sorry, I'm being told I've got it the wrong way around. My fault completely. Emma? Is it Emma Gibbs? Gemma, I do apologise. Yeah.
Good morning, thank you. So obviously Mr Delaney has provided a bit more information this morning, so we're grateful of that, and some of that does cover what I will mention here, but I'll just go through what I've got written down anyway. It is agreed that some of it is already covered, but there are some that isn't. Okay, so on behalf of the Chief Constable of West Mercia Police, I wish to raise an objection to the application for a temporary event notice applied for by Mr Delaney for an event to be held at Stone Arrow Farm, Peopleton, Worcestershire, on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th of May 2025. The objection being based around the licensing objectives of prevention of crime and disorder and public safety. We are sure that you as a committee panel members will have reviewed the police objection notice, which provides a brief summary of police concerns around the proposed event. The police objection being sent to Worcester Regulatory Services on Monday the 14th of April and hand-delivered to Mr Delaney's care of address of 48 Slimbridge Close, Redditch, and which was then followed up by a telephone call. You will have also considered the additional information as supplied by the applicant, Mr Delaney, prior to the application, and also further information supplied with the application which are attached to the submitted TENS for this 2025 event. Although police fully acknowledge the time taken by Mr Delaney to outline his position as event organiser and his provision of it, unfortunately police maintain the stance that this matter must be considered by yourself in the capacity of hearing panel decision makers as to whether the proposed event goes ahead or not. The Beltane Bash has, as Mr Delaney has and will I'm sure outline, has run for a number of years at various locations with relatively few problems, and much emphasis is made by Mr Delaney of the successful history of the event, and that is acknowledged by police. However, our concerns have been raised this year due to not only the change in use of the site, with it now being used to dump and store illegal waste, but also the lack of information from Mr Delaney as promised in his pre-application event plan received by Worcester Regulatory Services on the 21st of March 2005. Parking and access to the event site, so public safety. It is appreciated that last year's event ran somewhat smoothly with only a couple of learning points as a result, one of these being some concerns raised around attendees parking their vehicles on the roadside. This occurred due to adverse weather conditions and as a result of the higher number of guests had decided not to camp, therefore a higher number of vehicles attended the event on a short-term basis. Parking was overloaded, which led to vehicles being parked on the road, causing obstructions to the lane. In the application for the 2025 event, Mr Delaney refers to having an area of hardcore close to the entrance to the site to address any potential issues and prevent cars parking on the road. More information would be beneficial in relation to the exact area, how many vehicles can be held here, and a clear area to be cordoned off and highlighted on a detailed map of the event area. At this time, police cannot make an informed decision that this will be of an adequate size to accommodate sufficient vehicles. The applicant did agree in his pre-application notice that a detailed map of the event site will be submitted. A map has been submitted, but it is not detailed, and as stated in my application, written on what I describe as a scrap of paper. This raises concerns further around the planning of this event. Another example that this has not been thoroughly thought out in its entirety, or more importantly, advice and guidance previously given has not been accepted by the applicant. Arguably, more importantly, there are further concerns around the actual access onto the land due to the manner in which the land has been used over recent months. Having had a number of very large heavy goods vehicles being driven over the land, there is concern that any inclement weather before or during the event will have a severely detrimental effect on the already muddy entranceway and prevent vehicles from accessing the site altogether, therefore being left on the lane and causing a danger to other road users. It is appreciated that 2 specialist Land Rover vehicles can be utilised to assist the vehicles. However, it is clear that there should be further contingency in the case of this occurring, such as boards used across the entrance or gravelling. Numbers. Police fully acknowledge that the proposed event falls within a smaller scale event in terms of attendees and staff, with a limit of 499 to include staff, performers, caterers and paying guests. However, at this time, and with the information already provided within the application and pre-application paperwork, granted it's been mentioned in this further information pack, there is no consideration given to ensuring that the number doesn't go above 499, how this will be monitored, controlled and recorded. First aid, public safety. Event organisers open themselves up to ever-increasing levels of risk of litigation and legal liability, especially in relation to the medical provision of the event. The event organiser has a general duty to ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, the health, safety and welfare of their staff and people attending the site as guests. The event organiser should also ensure appropriate medical, ambulance and welfare provision is available to all those attending or involved in delivering the event. As highlighted previously, there are clear concerns here in relation to the accessibility of emergency vehicles onto site, With land already having been churned up, a small amount of rain and the repeated use of entrance by vehicles is likely to deem it impassable. I know Mr Delaney mentions that the weather has been good, and it has been, and the conditions are dry and the land is dry, but to me that gives a bit more concern in that if we do have some rain, it will not soak up into the land and rest on top. Without better planning and contingencies in this area, there are no assurances that emergency vehicles would be able to get onto the event site. Also, in relation to the topic of first aid, Mr Delaney agreed in his pre-application paperwork to provide names and details of first aid administrators and their relevant qualifications. Mr Delaney has provided in his application the name of Samantha Wingfield. However, no further information has been provided up until today, other than she has extensive knowledge. Evidence of her qualification needs to be provided, along with a recent DBS check, to ensure that authorities are satisfied that she is a person with reasonable qualifications, and background checks completed that show no concerns around her having responsibilities of children and adults, first aid and the care of the children. We still have seen no evidence of qualification apart from what's written in that extra information given today. There's no certificate provided or anything like that. That said, for up to 499 people, does Mr Delaney think that one person is an adequate number, although there's 2 now been named? Site safety. As previously detailed, and as we all know, the site has been used for dumping of waste over the recent months, and as such there is a large presence of HGV vehicles and tractors, along with the added safety concern around the uneven land and material dumped, resulting in there being a need for the applicant to ensure the safety of those present in this regard. Within the application, there is no mention of the illegal activity in and around the site. It is acknowledged that the field where the event will take place is of good order. However, there is no mention of the wider site hazards, which are high-risk areas attractive to young persons and other attendees. It is a view of the police that the removal of these vehicles or full fencing off of them should take place before any event authorisation occurs. Police patrols appear to have evidence that the waste site is still in full use, with suggestion of a raise in activity in the location recently. Police concerns in regards to the land have been supported by Mr Ralph from the Environmental Agency. Am I able to read out what he's written?
This is all extra notes from the police that I have no copies of as well, because this wasn't in their original objection,
No.
so I've never read any of this.
Okay, this is just what I'm reading out today.
I know, but in my, everybody's had my notes and the,
Okay, I can give you a copy of this.
and the
Uh,
yeah, thank you.
Police concerns in regards to the land are further supported by Jason Ralph from the Environment Agency, who states, on land at Stone Arrow Farm, there is a small compound area which for around 6 months has been operational as an unauthorised waste site. The site does not hold the required environmental permits or waste exemptions to control and mitigate any environmental impact from its operations. This brings with it the risk of amenity issues, dust, noise, etc., and potential land contamination should certain types of waste be inappropriately stored for a significant period of time. There is also the increased risk of a fire breaking out on the site through either self-combustion, deliberate burning, or through physical treatment of the waste, which causes the increase in temperature. All these factors could potentially pose a risk of the surrounding environment and those in the vicinity of the site. Furthermore, the wider site is currently filled with HGVs and mobile plant machinery, some of which is believed to be being used in the unauthorised waste activities within the compound. There are potential risks to any spectators or participants to the proposed festival from the regular movement of those vehicles on or off the site. The access to the site is on a small rural road, which already sees fairly heavy traffic during peak times. A large number of the HGV trailers are also filled with waste, and although less of a risk than being stored in one single pile within the compound, it nevertheless poses a small risk of fire should the material be stored for a significant period or start to degrade within containers. On a recent inspection of the main farm area, small amounts of waste and debris were seen deposited on the main farm area, which will be close to where the spectators or performers will be parking their vehicles and walking to the field designated for the festival. It is likely that the waste has not been subject to any robust sampling or assessment process by the producer and or the current holders. This could increase a potential risk to those visiting the site or camping overnight, especially in dry, windy weather where small particles of trommel fine waste could be windblown across the festival area. Moving on to stewards, crime and disorder. In relation to the prevention of crime and disorder points, police acknowledge that reported incidents received from event attendees in previous years is of very low level. The applicant refers to having stewards in place. However, police would like to see further details around numbers. Only 2 parking stewards are specified. Their accreditations and responsibilities would also be helpful in order to alleviate concerns moving forwards and how incidents of disorder will be effectively managed. Simply stating stewards are experienced does not provide adequate information. Are they adequately trained with an SIA accreditation? It is stated that on the Friday 2 stewards are at the key points to direct traffic, but where and how many? I don't know why I've put how many. You state a steward presence patrolling at all times through the event. How many and where again? How will contact between stewards be maintained? 2-way radios should be used in order for stewards to maintain contact and obtain the quickest available help or assistance if required. How will they be recognised? Will they be wearing tabards? Will they be easily distinguished? Dog leaflets, a lot of that has been covered with the leaflet provided today, but I'll read that out anyway. Again, the application promised to provide copies of the dog leaflets to be handed out at the event. Police have not received these up until today. As many of you will be aware, the number of dog-related deaths and injuries has increased over recent years. Some direction to dog owners needs to be enforced by the applicant. Although the information is given that the policy will be to keep dogs on leads, how are instances such as these going to be prevented, and what other advice will be given to the owners of dogs? For instance, the removal of any dog waste, where is that going to be stored? Is there any bins provided? Removal of any dog showing aggression or not in control. While this point may seem a minor detail, again, it shows a lack of planning and willingness to work with the authorities and fulfil commitments. In conclusion, the ultimate question remains, does the applicant fully understand the responsibilities to cover all contingencies in the event of an incident occurring? The fact that he continues to supply basic information with his application suggests not. In summary, therefore, please acknowledge the efforts made by the applicant to provide documentation around this year's event. However, the applicant simply needs to fully understand their responsibilities around ensuring the safety of all involved. Assurances must be given in order to ensure this event complies with all aspects of the 4 licensing objectives, and the applicant cannot continue to rely on past event history alone. As such, it is not the what has happened previously, but the planning for the what-ifs that must be fully complied with. It is agreed that in the past the event has run smoothly. However, this has not been only a lack of organisation around points previously made by authorities to the applicant, but the applicant has failed to include information as requested and as he has promised. This shows a lack of willingness to work with authorities and understand the potential seriousness of an incident occurring if there is a lack of initial planning put in place. Please understand this is a small event in comparison to others held. However, there are grave concerns with the event being managed efficiently and with it being run on a 10 with no enforceable conditions. Police would welcome the opportunity for this event to be managed via a temporary premise licence. Thank you.
PC Gibb, thank you. Are there any questions for the police? Members, officers? No, thank you. Mr. Delaney. Sorry, Liz, I missed you there.
I just wanted, which is your most important consideration? Is it the premises, the farm that is a problem, more so than Mr. Delaney's side of it?
Yeah, I mean, the event seems to go fairly smoothly, as I said previously. It's just the lack of planning for things that could happen, and that's what we are concerned about. The security, which were my other main points. All of the points together just show a lack of planning, and I know there is more information provided today, and thank you for that. The access, you know, if that's a small bit of rain, could cause access issues. The parking area hasn't been completely explored. I don't know where all the cars are going to go. I mean, you've said by the gate on some hardcore, but that's not shown on the map or explained in full detail how many it can hold. The first aid qualifications.
It's all right, we'll speak in a minute.
It would be quite good to have a map, actually, you know, showing where the farm is and where the car parking is, and also which part of the farm has got the waste problem on it, in comparison.
I have got some here, but only one copy. They are on emails. I can show on screen. Okay, that's fine. Oh.
Will we be able to see some copies of those as well?
Yeah.
I'll have to pass them round.
Thank you.
Could I just have a view of them and then you can pass them on? Yeah, you see, when she says to me, isn't that pretty? I'm
No,
sure.
they're pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, Pete.
Tell
Do
you
you want
what.
me to explain them?
I tell you what. That's a scrap of paper with a nice printed bit on it. Mine's a scrap of paper with some writing.
Can I have one, Pete, please?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a quarter of a mile away. Isn't it new?
Pete.
There's the yard up there.
I know, that's what I'm trying to ascertain. Because, yes, there are lorries there.
It's the yard up the road.
It's the yard up the road.
That's our field.
This is not anywhere near us.
Is it my turn to speak?
Sorry.
It's
Or do you need to look at maps? I don't want to look at maps. Yeah, we're just having a look at them ourselves to
Ours is-
determine. Although I did know where the
Yeah, we
waste is and we do know.
It's a different part of the country.
Unless they're absolutely certain of the plump, because that's why
Take
I put
pictures
in
of
there. I
different
think it's
parts of the
unfair
country.
to the farmer
not-
to mention
no,
it unless it's proved. It's an alleged thing that I think you shouldn't mention in public, because if it's not proved, then that's slander. If it's not proved, it's illegal activity. I don't know his
Yeah,
business,
picture
but
of the main
I wouldn't
farm
say that out
gardens,
loud
isn't there?
myself,
No?
unless it was proved.
Where we are is not on there.
It's all right.
No, where
So
we are,
Let's leave it
the
alone.
main
We're all
farmyard.
getting into conversation now,
Yeah.
instead of just dealing with it. Oh, I do.
That's off.
Isn't it gone?
I just seen it.
I mean, Mr. Delaney will come to you in a moment. I have to confess, I had difficulty with your site plan and locating that on the general map as to where it was. I have to be honest, I'm not sure that helps us much.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, same as your legal advisor. We have the site map. That's what we were looking at. Just for clarity for everybody in the room, when I was discussing it with the legal advisor, it was simply just a Google images of the site, which may assist you when considering the location and the additional information that's been submitted.
This, it was brought up last year about the lorries. It was part of last year's police objection, and they had photographs of lorries. And we told the hearing then that the farmer had reassured us that all lorries would be removed, and he did so.
Are there any further comments or questions to the police before we move on? Yes, of course, Judy.
Could you repeat the very last sentence of your report, because I didn't quite follow it?
Yeah.
It began with "we would welcome," I think.
When I find it.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Please understand this is a small event in comparison to others held. However, there are grave concerns with this event being managed efficiently and with it being run on a 10 with no enforceable conditions. Police would welcome the opportunity for this event to be managed via a temporary premise licence.
Temporary premises.
Premise licence.
Do we know what that is? I don't know. So what
So
is
with
that?
Niall may be the best one
Okay.
to speak to about this, but it's an event that can be held once a year at a location with conditions attached to it.
Is that- no.
That's not really consideration for this hearing.
Oh, okay. Okay, that would be
Deal
if
with
the
the
objection
hearing.
was upheld. And, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Delaney, your turn.
I feel I have to deal with the waste first, so don't forget, is that, as we've been talking about that just, and the waste is the farmer's business, it's his own business. I don't know his business. I've heard a little bit about it, and when I got told about it by the environmental health, I rang him up and asked him, and he told me, and I can only take his word on it, that he's been visited by the environmental health and the police and there's no problems. I can only take that on his word. So, and I've spoken to him once and his farmhand called John twice, and I spoke to John about that waste. I spoke to John this morning about that hearing, but that was a different matter. And I think a lot of what they're calling waste is scrap metal, and all this business of his goes on. I know that the small yard, it's a quarter of a mile up the road, even from the entrance gate to our field, and I feel like it doesn't matter where in the countryside you're going to hold a festival or an event. If you ride it on somebody's farm, you can guarantee if you walk out of the event field into other parts of that farm, you'll probably find farm machinery. So, you know, I'd just like to reassure that, and I have put it in previous applications, that our attendees come and expect to be contained in a field and looked after. No one's looking to be walking out and going for a walk unless it's the public footpath to the village. People don't wander around. They want to be contained in the field. They've come to be in the event. I'm glad the police acknowledged that it's a small event, you know, because I think where they talk about the stewards, an SIA badge holder is not a legal requirement for a temporary event notice. Several years ago we did have an SIA badge holder for 2 events in a row. They were both ladies. And after that we came to the policy of, because always for many years, our stewards are volunteers, they don't need to be trained, this is a temporary event notice. And all of them are people who have been involved in the event. When I put words core staff, I mean people who have been involved for a long time and have a sense of responsibility for the event. Although the majority of our attendees are repeat attendees, 90% of them, and you generally find that most people have a responsibility towards the event. I'd like to say that it's right at the end of my presentation that I handed in today that I say that an event doesn't last for 20 years and that many temporary event notice by breaking health and safety rules, not having a mindset towards health and safety. And when we've mentioned our first aid points, although we're lucky enough to have Samantha Wingfield and Anne Thomas, who are, there are other people on the site. David Sanger here runs one of the stages. He has a first aid certificate himself, and he's a registered showman. There are other people on the event site who have first aid as well, but they're all volunteers up to their own tasks on the site. We chose Samantha Wingfield as our main point of first aid because she runs the children's area and she seems to be a convenient place to do it, and she and her staff are so well qualified. However, we have never claimed to have, we can give you medical attention. Do you know what I mean? If you've cut your finger, we've got really good up-to-date first aid boxes that we make sure are all up-to-date and renewed before we begin the event every year. If you've cut your finger or banged your thumb with an hammer or fallen over and grazed your knee, then our first aid point is the right place to go and seek, because it's carefully signposted, because you'll find a good first aid box there and somebody qualified to deal with you. I'm not qualified in first aid, but I myself have wrapped up a burnt arm with the right bandages and cream while we waited the ambulance, put plasters on fingers for people, and once removed a bee sting from the roof of a man's mouth with a pair of tweezers. But we don't claim to be people who are skilled in medical attention. If somebody, we have our procedures, which you see written in the applications extra notes. It tells of our procedures if there's a serious accident and the way we go, what we would go about it. We've never really had a serious accident, but you can see that we have event accident procedure, and each volunteer who works as a steward, that's one of our dog wardens there, one of our stewards here, the core members of staff, these people are shown the event procedure, the same as you read there. Cordon it off, don't let any other members of the public in, let the event organisers know, call the ambulance, make sure the gate staff are expecting the ambulance and have it led through the site by a steward. I've put in the notes how we keep the trackways wide open. We make very wide trackways, we mark them out with flags, and the two stewards they mention, it's not there's just two stewards, but I do carefully describe they are the greeting stewards. That they meet the gate staff who give you a ticket number as you come in through the gate, and as the site slowly fills up, the two meeting stewards meet people as they come in and say, are you going to some particular part of the site, or just do you want general camping? If you want general camping, they'll say, follow that track up there, go to the end, you'll find lots of camping. As it gets tighter and tighter, the stewards, the two of them, it only takes two, it is a small event, not a large site, to walk round one at a time, so there's always one at the gate, make sure nobody's parked anywhere to keep any of those, block any of those drags. By the time the Saturday comes, the attendees are all in, and the tracks hold themselves, and then they don't become roadways anymore. They become public footpaths. Yeah. And we do clearly mark our first aid. I always have a full first aid box. I've got it at home with me now anyway. And I put a first aid sign up by mine. The main first aid sign goes up at the children's area because we think it's an obvious place to go looking for your children's area. It's on the side of our main open area green that we keep open just inside the event. And Mr. Sanger has said to me, like, he's got first aid and he always carries his first aid kit and has first aid kit at his place. But if I want to put a sign up there for an extra one, I can do. You know, because he's a registered showman, goes around the country, and he's required to have his own first aid qualification and his own public liability insurance, and our children's area has its own public liability insurance. So to say and our event has always had its same public liability insurance, and we don't have procedures for calling an ambulance, procedure for if there's a fire, procedures and for how to look after the attendees of the event, and event structure. We don't have these things because we were told to by authorities. We have these things because as our event developed over the years, we put into place the things that we could see we needed. Our first aid area exists because we have members of the public there, not because it's a legal requirement or such like. And to say that we could go through 20 years, each year being visited by police authorities, Sergeant Shaw and his team for 8 years at Preston Baggart, Sergeant May, the current police licensing administration's predecessor, and his team visiting throughout the event. You know, this isn't, they don't come and say hello once and go away. Throughout the event, you have visits from the police, visits from the environmental health, every event ever. And to say that we could build ourselves a 20-year history and reputation with those licensing authorities to have an event passed annually without having planning and structure and mindfulness towards public safety, I think would be an impossible. And I think what I've been through and over the years as in the organising of the events, it would have been impossible for us to exist without planning and structure and all the things the police have objected on. They're saying, and they even say that they acknowledged in their last page of it, they say, their last paragraph of the objection, the police say they acknowledge the success. They acknowledge the success, the events and the successful management of them, and agree there has been minimum disruption. You can't acknowledge the successful management of them and then declare them not safely managed in the same objection. I think that's a contradiction, you know, because I can't say any more that you can't build the history such as we've built without a mindset towards public safety. And our stewards may be all volunteers, but they're all experienced at this event. They're not experienced that you could go, right, you're a steward. Well, they are actually. If you've told one of our stewards, stand by that door over there and don't let anybody in, you go, oh, right, I'll do that then. And, but they are core members of staff. You know.
We use walkie-talkies to communicate.
We do have walkie-talkies, yeah.
And the mobile phone.
Yeah.
And although the police do say that the police have objected on lack of detail since this particular administration took office in 2022, and lack of detail in the objection makes us sound unprofessional. But even though we describe procedures, we feel that the police of this particular administration seek detail to object on rather than seeing what we've got and what they feel is missing. Even they've been down taking photographs of the event site, I think shows a premeditation towards objecting before they even receive the application from the event. As I say, this isn't the first police licensing team that we have had negotiations and dialogue with. I do mention in my own notes that I've handed in today, in the second paragraph of my third page, where it's headed at the top, event response to issues raised in the police objection, halfway down that page I say that the police suggest they have had to refer our application to the licensing hearing to act within notification timescales. That's the 3 days that the police have to reply to the event once they receive the application. I then carry on to say, and it's true, that in the past, having submitted application, event organisers have been contacted on the telephone by previous police licensing or environmental health officials during the 48-hour time limit for response to attend to be asked question of any outstanding issues. I've been telephoned by Sergeant Shaw when he receives his in Henley in Arden, when we were there for 8 years. He'd telephone me each year. Is it the same as last year? If he had any concerns or issues, he would say, what are you doing about this or that? I'd say, oh, we're going to do this about that this year. We're going to start this policy this year. He would then be satisfied and choose not to object to the event. And we feel that that is what the 3 days from receiving the application are for, is that if you have any questions or issues or feel like there's something lacking in the application and you wish to speak to the event and say, well, could we have a bit more information of this? Could we have a word about that? Then those are the 3 days the police could contact you to instead of just lodging objection. And in this particular case, the police mentioned the pre-application. I was persuaded by licensing and environmental health officials that it would, last year at a meeting in October 24th, that it would be a good idea to do a pre-application so that any issues anybody had could be resolved before I hand in the actual application. And then there'd be no reason to object. And we do feel that some of the issues, that the waste isn't on the site and even the weather, I'll go into that in a minute, that some of these issues could have been resolved without the need for a hearing, with maybe more communication from the police, as the environmental health and licensing since last October at the meeting. I've put in my notes that I've handed today. I've made dialogue with us, telephone calls, correspondences and a couple of meetings, some in my camp at the side of the road in my horse-drawn caravan, and the October one in the council licensing offices. And I feel that the environmental health have not objected to the event because they've had dialogue with us. And because they've had dialogue with us, the environmental health have sorted out any concerns or issues they had in their mind before they received the application. And so they have no reason to object. Whereas since the meeting last year, we've had no communication at all from the police until they lodged the objection on receiving the application. Unless you want me to read through my actual notes I've given you today that I know you've probably all just read, I might just deal with what I've got in some notes I made while the police officer was speaking. Excuse me. If you don't mind, I'll go through the police objection, piece by piece, giving my response to the actual objections from the point where the police start with, this is the 2 licensing objectives of which they've objected on, the 4 licensing objectives that the event has to fulfil that I've been aware of for many years. And they've only chosen to object on 2 of them. Prevention of crime and disorder. We're proud to be a kind of people that doesn't have crime. There is before I go through the police objection, there is a very important, in the extra notes. This doesn't really have anything to do with the objection, but it's an important paragraph for me. For the panel to understand our events. And I'll just read the short paragraph at the top of our extra notes, because I like to understand the nature of the event, where I say the horse-drawn events are based on the promotion of alternative green energies, the importance of recycling, traditional crafts, and the highlighting awareness of humanitarian issues. We do have presentations and stuff. Our group has showcased solar power and pioneered recycling techniques over a period of years for 20 years. And the reason I wanted to read that paragraph is because I think it shows the mindset of the kind of people who attend. And the kind of people who attend these events is, I doubt if anybody locks their door at our event. I haven't got a lock on my place. Everybody's intense. Crime, We've had accidents. I've got them written in an accident report book at home. I can remember the pot noodle dropped in the lap, the person who fell and cracked their elbow on their own caravan doorstep, the man with the bee sting, the lady with the dog bite. I have a small series of accidents. What was I saying then? Yeah, but crime, theft, or harm is not an issue I've ever had to deal with at our events. Our night steward is not an SIA badge holder. He's a man called Andrew Keane, and he's given me permission to mention his name. And he's extremely experienced in the security trade, and he works constantly. He was at Cheltenham Racecourse and such like, and he does me walkabout in the night, not looking for is there a crime or anything going on. His main job is make sure nobody turns on a car stereo or such, because we have no amplified music allowed on the site at all once the licence time period has ended for that each night. Okay, the police objection, they started with their public safety, fulfilling the public safety objectives, and they mention about the entrance to the site and the problems we had last year with the bad weather, and it was extreme bad weather. And so I think you've all read the notes anyway, where I say, and it is the truth, isn't it? The adverse weather conditions of 2024 are described in the extra notes. I'd like to point that out because the police objected to our car parking and such. The car park, I'd like to explain about car park shortly. That is an error on my point on the map. The adverse weather conditions of 2024 are described in our extra notes in the 10 application, along with the measures the event took to reduce attendance. We put out on social media sites and people's personal contact sites that there would be no more entrance to the event, and we did that from about 8 o'clock on the Friday night. We allowed a few people who had already reached the area and were outside of the event in the locality, in laybys and such, who'd already come. We allowed them to come in on the Saturday morning, and then we allowed nobody in on the Friday night once we'd shut it, and then we let the few people in the area in on the Saturday morning and closed the event. The people who did park outside due to the bad weather conditions, we put one steward out there all the time, taking care of it. Up to the right they were parking, and we made sure, we kept account, and we made sure they parked neatly, with half of the car on the verge and half on the road, and we kept account of them. There was never more than 12 cars there at one time, vehicles in that line. And our short-term car park, each evening, as the event finished for the evening, those who come, the reason we have short-term car parking near the gate at all is you get a small amount of people every year who aren't camping over. The majority are camping over, and those people all leave in the evening. That's why we have them positioned near the gate entrance. It should have been marked on the map between the entrance and the toilets, because we expect it to function in field this year like it usually does, our short-term car park. It was only because last year some people from the local area who live in towns and villages of Worcestershire and Warwickshire, because of the harsh weather conditions, chose to come nightly instead of camping as they usually would, and so our short-term car park filled. As I say, if I continue about that, we'd like it noted that although the police described the lane as a narrow stretch of road, it is in fact a full-size normal 2-lane highway. You know, the road was never at any time blocked so that traffic couldn't get past, and our steward, we swapped stewards that were out there, was always making sure of that. And we consider it important to make point to the panel that the adverse weather conditions does not mean we've had some rain. We don't get the kind of conditions we had underfoot last year even if it rains now, those conditions will not be repeated. I'm a man of the land and I work on the land, and if it rains, even the officer said it will run off. The problem wasn't that the rain would run off because it was hard. The problem last year was the rain had soaked into the ground. And the adverse weather conditions of 224 were due to excess rainfall through most of February, most of March and much of April, clearing up just a week before the event. Like I say, we've had rain before, you know, over a period of 20 years when you run a music festival. Now and again it rains. But the conditions last year were absolutely exceptional. Normally, even when it rains, our short-term car park carries on functioning within the bounds of the event, and the ground as it is this year, we fully expect that to be happening. This year in 2025, the opposite weather conditions have prevailed to last year, with an extremely dry February, March and April so far. It is therefore extremely unlikely that even with some rain, the extreme adverse conditions of 2024 could possibly be repeated in 2025, as the ground is already dry and hard. Weather reports, I've had a look this week, all predict dry conditions will continue to the foreseeable future. On Radio 4 yesterday, they said we could be having a heat wave by next Wednesday. So I think the police will experience this year that the problems we have with people parking on the lane will not be a problem this year. When it comes down to the lorries, I do feel that when this was all an objection within the police objection last year, when Sergeant Hallam brought photographs to the licensing hearing of lorries parked at the gate, and we assured the police and the panel, we've got agreement with the farmer, there'll be no lorries there when our event arrives. He runs his whole own businesses the whole time we're not there. You know, we only go there for 2 weeks of the year. He's got his own farm to run. I'd also like to point out that the farmers complied with us last year in clearing the entrance, removing the vehicles, and there were no vehicles in the field and no vehicles adjacent to the event. And we were requested, and well, we're told that by the Environmental Health that legislation actually is that all livestock must be removed from the land before attendees arrive, a month before attendees arrive, and we told this to the farmer. He's complied with that and removed his sheep stock off of the land within the month period before the event. So the farmer is not a man who doesn't comply with us and doesn't do what he said he would do. You know, and he didn't have. He could have said, "I don't want your event if I've got to take my sheep off the field," but he took the sheep off the field. he removed the lorries from the site. The strip of tarmac that he's offered us, if we should have had the same kind of adverse weather conditions that we could use as a just outside the event short-term car park, is a strip of tarmac that he uses to store large lorries on. But he said he'd clear that for us this year, and it's as wide as a road, and it runs from just by the gate entrance about 500 yards straight into his farmyard, quarter of a mile away. If you go out onto the lane and turn right a quarter of a mile, you come to the farmer's actual yard. This is like a back lane road he's got himself that's not on a road he can use to drive up and down with heavy vehicles without going onto the road is what he uses it for. And it is like a wide road. It's hard for me to describe where it is because I have no map of that. You know, it runs from our gate, where I've put the slight overlap on my small markings. It runs into that overlap between the two fields it's running and goes straight across the bottom of the field that's diagonally adjacent to us that he keeps them in. Can I show the panel? not many people come and don't camp. It was only unusual for us last year that and it was only some of the people who live local in the towns and villages of Worcestershire and Warwickshire, because of the adverse weather conditions, but they still wanted to come to the event. They took the opportunity to not camp because they could go home every night. And each night, and we did keep account on the stewards, I made sure that we kept account. I said, I want to know what the most cars that park there at one time, because the people came and went. And we think, in our point of view, that there was no more than the majority of cars parked at any one time. We counted was 12 cars parked along the lane. And each night, when the last band had finished and the show was ending, all of those people went home. And by the time, within half an hour of the show ending each night, there was no cars parked on the road. And this year, it's been drier weather conditions this year than other years when our short-term car park has functioned okay. Even if it rains, the short-term car park usually functions okay, because rain doesn't cause bad conditions. Extreme rain for several months does. If I continue. Yeah, and so I say that no one can predict the weather, and I feel that the police objection could have taken into account possibly the weather, and I kind of put that, but that doesn't matter. I've put, this being the case, our event would expect our field short-term car park to function normally as in past events, and if conditions continue as they have been, it will be unlikely to need the hardcore track adjacent to the event mentioned in the 10 application that the farm has made available to us for emergency car parking, although it will still remain available if needed. We think the cars on the lane issue is therefore unlikely to be repeated. And I admonish myself when I say I, the applicant, described the intended intended short-term car park area in the extra notes. I put it in the description in the notes, but admittedly forgot to include it in the site map. It should be marked in an area alongside the fence line between the entrance and the toilets. And this is a genuine error on my part, and I do make errors now and again. That doesn't make the event unsafe to the public because I make the occasional error. I mean, we all make errors. I mean, even Miss Gemma Gibbs signs herself off on the police objection as the Pollock Alcohol and Licensing Officer because she's accidentally missed the E off the end of police. And I'm only mentioning that to show that we all do make errors, and because she's made a spelling mistake, I'm not going to say she's not fit for a job or call her a piece of paper or call her A4 sheets, scraps of paper. Although it's called, the map might be called a scrap of paper, but to me it's an A4 sheet. I think in the modern world where the police obviously have the equipment to print out any piece of sheet of paper they would like to present to at any time, whereas I'm handwriting mine in a horse-drawn caravan at the side of the road. And I have put, I won't mention that piece again, but I have put on it that I think that the term scrap of paper is inappropriate as objection. That shouldn't form part of the objection on safety and public safety. There are site hazards is after the bit of the police objection starts with the public safety, which seems to be mostly about the weather, the conditions for the weather, and I feel like I've dealt with that. I hope I've satisfied the panel with that we won't have the same kind of problems at the entrance this year. But the police say site hazards, we've been through that quite a lot, and they'd say they viewed pictures of the site and the access to it. I don't know when they viewed the pictures to the site, but yeah, site hazards. The vehicle stored on the farm in the field diagonally adjacent to the event was raised in the police objection in 2024, along with photographs of vehicles parked near the field entrance. The event reassured the licensing committee hearing that the field stored the field with stored vehicles contained in it is a completely separate entity on the farm to the event field, and that in agreement with the farmer, vehicles parked in the entrance would be removed before the event arrived. The camping areas of the field are at the opposite far end of the site from the field with the vehicles stored in it. The campers couldn't be further away from those farm vehicles that are not in our field. And only a small portion of the two diagonally adjacent fields overlaps, and our main crew area and steward volunteer staff camping forms a barrier between the two fields on the overlap. On that overlap there, at that end, on my hand-drawn map, you'll see the main stage and marquees at that end, and as you come in through the gate and turn left, all of the people who are camped and parked from that gateway to the hedge line there at the side of and the back of the main stage, and we have the site office there, and we have only anybody who's working at the event parking along there, and we feel that, and also the campers are at the far end of the field. The event reassurances to the 2024 subcommittee hearing proved to be the case. Vehicles at the field entrance were removed before the event arrived, and no one from the event entered the stored vehicles field. So people they want to be contained. People want to know, this is, where are we? Oh, we're in this field here, we're camped here, there's the stage, there's the cafe. No one wants to go outside of the field. They're not interested. They're in that event world for a weekend before they leave. And I mentioned the burning of waste, which is on a totally separate part of the farm. It's in the, I believe it's in the yard, a quarter of a mile up the road, isn't it? Further up the road, as you go towards Peopleton, I think it's all in the yard on the left there. Well, that seemed to be where he was collecting some scrap metal last year. And as for, they mentioned that this could cause a problem with extra traffic up and down the road. I have stated in the application that caution event entrance signs are placed on the Peopleton Road to warn any farm, commercial or public traffic that there is an event entrance. I feel like when they were saying he's not going to be burning waste there, is he, over a bank holiday weekend while we're all at an event just down the road? I doubt there's going to be any lorries driving up there on a bank holiday weekend, bringing any waste or whatever the business is that he has. And I do feel that saying that a business going on in a completely different part of the farm, nowhere near us, to say that we could have a health hazard from smoke or ashes or something or another blown over from that area, I do feel like that is taking the objections a bit of excess, and he's objecting of things that are not in the event field. I mean, you know, how many cars are going to drive down the A44? Am I sure that the attendees won't get some kind of carbon monoxide ill effects from the amount of normal traffic moving around? You know, and I do feel that it isn't relevant anyway to the interior of our field, the functioning of our event, or indeed our mindset towards public safety. Insurance is mentioned next in the where it says that they emailed another brick.co to get confirmation of our insurance document. I have written onto many temporary event notice applications that many times the sentence that I've written, the event holds an annually renewed public liability insurance with the Zurich Insurance Company. I'm not going to write that onto an event application without it being a true fact. And but we understand that the police like to dot I's and cross the T's, and they they emailed another brick hotmail, and they emailed her on the Friday afternoon, and she answered first thing Monday morning. only that by then the police had already made their objection and put it in as part of it. She did that on Monday morning because she had to get in touch with the insurance and pay our insurance 2 weeks earlier than we normally renew, just before the event. Just as we arrived, we renew, so that we could have the proof. You know, although last year's proof existed, it was last year's policy. And so she emailed the insurance at 9 o'clock on Zurich Insurance on 9 o'clock on Monday morning, and within the hour they got back to her and she emailed the police back with the cover note insurance that I've never even seen. I've sent one email in my life, and it was to Fettenham magazine with me allotment article in it the other day. But so we feel that they emailed the insurance and didn't get a reply. Although then they say, oh, we did get a reply and we're not objecting on that anymore, it does happen to be a sentence that occupies a form that is one of the sentences that's brought us all to this room today. You know, including the parts all about the weather and the access. I feel like even that could have been dealt with. We could have discussed the weather and the problems we had last year, and now looking unlikely for that to happen this year with the police, and maybe we all wouldn't be in a hearing. If we go through it, so there's the first objection under public safety is all about the weather and the entrance. And like I say, I think that we could have had dialogue to obviously notice between us, the licensing authorities, that that probably wouldn't be the case this year. So I feel like that objection is almost invalid by the weather. Then the site hazards is the next one. I'm doing a summary now. And that is not in the event field, has nothing to do with the event field, and I can't see it affecting us in any way whatsoever, whatever the farmer's doing for a business. And I think, if I was him sat here, he told me he's had the environmental health visit him and it's all above board. He told me on the telephone. And I think the police ought to be a bit more careful mentioning that it's illegal activities unless that's been proved, but that's the farmer's own personal thing. And the numerous reports of burning waste, I don't think that's got anything to do with us or shouldn't be considered as part of the objection because it's nothing to do with us, and I think that's coming from local rumour. The next one is that they emailed the insurance, and I've replied to that. And then the next one is the detailed map of the event, and that's be supplied on what can only be described as a scrap of paper. I've admitted to the error of not marking the short-term car parking. I feel a bit on the map. I feel a bit foolish for that. It's because I copied it from last year's map, and it got all the and we used the area just outside of the entrance, that small area I showed you. But this year we expect it to function inside. The dog responsibility leaflets, that was unfortunate. I did put in the pre-application that I would supply the dog leaflets. But me and Sue is one of our dog wardens with her partner, and they work the dog wardens. Sue and Bob do a fantastic job. They walk the event site with dog leads around their necks and orange tabards on. And if anybody's got a loose dog, even if it's just there and they're sat just there by the fire, you can guarantee Sue walks up and gives them a dog leaflet. My little dog's tied at home in my wagon now. If I'm by my campfire and my dog's off, my dog warden walks up and gives me a leaflet. You know, and the leaflets, and Sue has made success of the dog wardening job by refusing to say no, and if someone says I haven't got a dog lead, she takes one off from round her neck and hands it to them. And I did try to get hold of Sue. She said I can bring you dog leads, but it couldn't happen until either last night or today. I said, well, you want to come to the hearing anyway, you may as well bring them today. So Sue's bought me the dog leaflets, and they were it was one leaflet handwritten by me in 2015. And I think it wouldn't have made any difference if I'd have handed in the dog leaflets in the application anyway, because I think because it's handwritten that the police may have called it a scrap of paper. And you can see we don't only say to people you've got to control your dog. We say how we wish to remain a dog-friendly event, and you have to work to do that. Keep your dog secured at your camp. respect other dog owners' camp space, and this part is very important to us. Respect non-dog owners' camp space. We made sure that was on our leaflets when I wrote them. No dogs in the kids' area. No dogs in the main stage marquee. And that man, Ian Votes, you go in there with your dog, he chase you out. He's so strict on it, it's incredible, isn't it? No dogs in bar areas without the barman's permission. A man sat with his little terrier at his feet having a beer. Welcome, you know. Dogs must be walked on leads in designated areas, and the designated area at this particular event is the public footpath that runs all along the whole length of the field on the right-hand side as you look in from the entrance. And you enter it with the gate at the bottom end of it and a gate at the top end of it. And we have a policy. If you haven't got dog bags, you better have a shovel in your hand. And we ask each other, you know, because we wish to the farmer to be pleased with us as well. You know, we can't leave dog excrement all over his land. He's already told us that about the sheep disease that can be caused by dog excrement, and we're quite strong. Our dog wardens and general stewarding staff play a part of the dog warden job, and I can only call the dog warden job a great success. As in, I'll admit that in 2013 and 14, I did start to get a little bit of a odd dog fight, a dog bite, and the odd loose dog problem. So it was in discussion with Sergeant Shaw from Henley and Arden that I decided to come up with the dog leaflets and dog wardens and a strict sense of how to keep your dog on the sides if we wish to remain a dog-friendly event. And thanks to Sue, I can only call it a success.
And the footpath is cleaned up after, totally.
Yeah, the footpath here.
No dog.
This is I'd like to point out that in that this is, as I quote in the beginning, this is an extremely environmentally minded folk and people. This is not this is a people who, when this event is over, you can come to that event on a Tuesday morning when we've not taken in a single piece of rubbish and the customers have left the day before, and you're looking across a green field. Nobody leaves even any rubbish. Everybody takes it with them. Everybody's strong on recycling, and we have the recycling cans and bottles from the bar and the marquee. And I just say that bit because this is a conscious attendance. And I can when I look across the field and walk the field after events, I'm always in awe at how clean the people leave it.
Mr. Delaney, thank you. That was very thorough. Can I ask on your waste management? You've just alluded to recycling, which is brilliant, and presumably dog poo goes wherever dog poo goes. How do you deal with it at the end of the festival?
Do you know? You won't believe what I've just said, but it is true. When that event leaves, there is no rubbish. We have no mixed rubbish in any way whatsoever.
There is picture evidence on social media from the conclusion of each event. Yeah. How clean the
Everybody
I take bottles to. I take the bottles to the Redditch waste disposal.
Yeah, thank you. That's
and the cans.
excellent.
And they're
Thank
both there next door to each other in Redditch.
Are there
and I go
any-
there every year.
Any questions for Mr. Delaney?
Do I need to continue?
Yes. Do you have a DBS certificate for Victoria? Is it Victoria?
No, it's Samantha Wingfield. I don't have any of her DBS certificates. I spoke to her last night on the phone. She's up in Scotland still at the moment, and sent me that message telling me all about her life and her work and her staff and how she deals with things. If you met her, she's an extremely professional lady. I haven't got her actual qualifications here, but when she's on site during the week of the lead up at the event, police can come and meet her and speak to her and see her qualifications. And I did see Sergeant Hallam in 2022 having quite a long, extensive conversation with Samantha, and he met her again. I saw him speaking to her again 224 last year as we toured the site. So and she has emailed him in the past with her qualification. And so I know that like I say, although I can't produce the qualification and didn't even have all the information I've got on her, I did have it for last year as well, but I'm not aware near last year's paperwork and objection either. Yeah, and she's an extremely professional lady in life, and the children's area couldn't be run better. She's one of the people responsible for children's area at any event, anywhere. And like I say, I couldn't produce her qualifications, but I was aware that the police already knew about her and had met her before.
Can I ask how many children you're expecting?
We don't get a large amount of children as well. You'd be
No.
quite surprised at that. And we've commented in the past that we think the majority of the children come with the real core members who are working the event.
Right.
You know, you see their children. You go to the children's area, and there's lots of children in the children's area. You know, they'll have like 15 at a time, and you'll see your friends' children. You know, and it's so that they're catered for.
So there
really.
might be 15 children at a time in the children's area doing
Yeah,
an
I'd
activity
say that-
with about how many adults helping them?
Well, she puts in her notes that she will not have a child there without a responsible adult who's
Okay.
there. That she puts in there that her and Anne are both safeguard, and for their own public liability insurance that they get themselves for the children's area.
The children actually come with their adult?
Yeah,
Okay.
and her and Anne Thomas are both safeguard trained to look after children, and they make sure one of them is always in there. She reassures me of that.
Okay. Sorry, are you done?
The track that goes for is it always available for access for ambulances or fire? That it's not covered up by the people's cars as they're parking?
Like I say, our greeting stewards, they make sure that as people arrive, and we'll direct people, your camping's over there, oh, you park the children's area's crews up there, and as they go, as people park, as the event fills, the two greeting stewards take it in turns to walk around the whole of the event's tracks that we've laid out with little flags. We put flags out to mark them as roads, small sticks with a little bit of ribbon on them to mark where those drags are as everybody comes in. If someone accidentally parks on one of the stewards looking after that. Only on the Friday that happens, because that's when everybody's coming in. And they make sure nobody pitches a tent or puts the car sticking out into an area, so we can clearly walk the drags. Like I say, by Saturday, the attendees are all situated in their camping places, and the tracks are now there and open. And they're double the width of a vehicle. I make sure any emergency vehicle can get through.
And what sort of demographics of people come? What sort of age, style? Are they families, or perhaps not necessarily families? Sort of age groups?
Yeah, I do say you get all from the young to the old. Yeah, and we have quite an eclectic mix of bands on. You know, and so you get people who like to go and watch live music, camp in them circumstances, and have a mindset towards environmental issues. I would say I can't give a demographic of an age group even, because I can think of people from in their 20s to people, you know. We have a kind of a repeat custom. 90% of the people, if I don't know them now by name, I know them by face. It's the majority of the people, repeat attendees, we kind of all know each other, and it's reached a point where things happen. Like I've had young men say to me, I've been coming to this event with my parents all of my life, and now I'm in a band playing here, you know, and it's that kind of thing. If somebody's new to the event, you can guarantee they've come with somebody who has already attended the event, and everybody is kind of known to everybody. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Also, I see that you've got a bar that's open until 2 o'clock in the morning, which I think, does that provoke people to be a bit more violent or a bit noisier?
No, We've requested that particularly for all of our event history. We've closed at 2 o'clock, even the main stage and everything in the evening, because we found over a short period of time when we first started the events that's the time everything starts to quieten down of its own accord anyway, and it's a lot less work for the staff to do than when the event shuts off early. We got requested by the parish council at the October meeting last October 24th and the environmental health. They didn't demand it, but they suggested to us that it could be seen favourably by the parish if we were to shut the stages, the main stage, at 12 o'clock midnight. Well, we had a discussion about this. I went back from the meeting, told other people who helped me organise these things, and as they said things to us like you could find continuity in one venue with a bit of dialogue and compromise, we decided this is quite a good idea. And so we did, but knowing that if we shut it all at 12 o'clock midnight, that then we're going to have a load of people, bands just finished, they're not going home somewhere, home's in a tent over there, you know. And we have experienced that a couple of times in the past, once in Warwick when we had licence only till 12 o'clock, I remember, and everybody's still awake and walking round. So that came up at the meeting where we said, shall we shut the stages at 12? Someone said, well, the stewards are going to be walking about asking everybody to turn off car stereos when they've gone home to their own camps, because it'd be no amplified music from that moment. So we suggested to the environmental health and the licensing beforehand, and I told them in the pre-application that I would apply for, that we would shut the stages at 12 o'clock midnight, but could we keep our bars, get licensed to keep our bar running till 2 o'clock in the morning, so that the site, people who want to stay awake straight after the bands have finished have got somewhere to go, a bit more of an outlet, and then slowly the site quietens itself down. And our barman and our stage managers have helped us. David Sangri runs one of the stages. They've helped us to have a success of our events because they've been so strict on their shut-off times, and the time comes, that's it. You know, we give last orders and all sorts.
My only concern is that there is a nursing home quite close to you. So if you're playing the music in the bars till 2 o'clock, it might be a bit much.
Last year, Stam's a steward, and her fella's a sound technician in his life, in his normal life. And last year, me and him went with a sound meter down to the farmyard, and it backs onto the old people's home. That's the farm's actual house, a quarter of a mile or more down the road. We went down the road, and in the farmer's yard, we had a reading, quiet reading, well under the decibels of the legal limits, and we walked around out the farmer's yard into the road and around into the driveway. This is at 1 o'clock in the morning when the last band was in full throng. We walked round into the driveway of the residential home, and it registered naught, and we couldn't hear it. And then a lorry went past on the A44, and it went all big for a little moment, and then it went back down again. And I mentioned this at the meeting last year to the environmental health, the police and the licensing officials, and we were quite pleased with the volume coming from the site and that was when the main last band was on the Saturday night, and that was as loud as the event will ever get. The barman plays music. You have to approach the bar really to hear that music. When we say there'll be music still in the bar till 2 in the morning, you won't be, if you've decided you're not going to the bar and you've gone home to go to bed, you won't be able to hear the bar. This man runs a small acoustic stage, that we have it comes horse-drawn. He's been walking it up the country for the last 6 weeks because he does shows down south as well, and that has solo acts, 2-piece and 3-piece, more acoustic guitar acts. Although it's got a PA and stuff with microphones, it's not a band. It's a small thing with small acts on, and we make sure that our main stage music doesn't interfere with the acoustic stage on the other side of the site. So it doesn't interfere with the locality. We've been very strong on our music regulation over the years, because being strict with ourselves of shut off and volume is one of the mainstays of how we've managed to keep a success going for so many years. It's part of an anchor of that we go out of our way to not break temporary event notice rules and legislations, and if in any licensing authority any year says to us, you haven't had this or you haven't got that, the next year we have it. And those kind of things have been our growing success.
Mr. Delaney, just to confirm, you're requesting a licence until 2 a.m. for the sale of alcohol.
Yeah,
but you're happy for amplified music to be switched off at midnight.
In the extra notes that are provided with the application, I do give a little bit more detail on the note before the page before the map on the last page. Although in the temporary event notice form, I've put 2 o'clock in the morning because that's just the box in the form. In the extra notes, I have put that the main stage will host live bands on Friday, and I've put Saturday and Sunday, and I've put the hours as from 1600 hours each afternoon until 2400 hours midnight. So the main stage, although the bar will be playing music till 2 a.m, the main stage is shut at midnight on each night, in compliance with the parish council and the environmental health request.
There's no rave music.
Yeah, we don't have a rave. We're all about live music, and
Nice
the music is only on in the bar.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions from Mr.
Talking about the
Delaney?
70s DJ.
No.
Do you remember him?
Yeah, just in relation to Mr. Delaney's point about dialogue, firstly, I didn't feel the need to have any further dialogue with you because there had been a meeting in October where we discussed things that were going to go on. Then you put your pre-application in, and any dialogue was done through Louise as well. So my expectation was that when you put the 10 in, everything would be covered, and unfortunately it wasn't, which is why I objected to that.
I can see that, yeah, and I have put in that I had some corresponding all of the stuff together from people who are off on their different lives proved a bit more difficult.
And today you've mentioned a lot of things to us that haven't been mentioned in any paperwork anywhere. For instance, for instance, radios. Had you have put in information about the radios there, I wouldn't have had to bring it up today. Had you have given us dog leaflets, that wouldn't have been included in the objection either. So it's all about getting all the things in order. You've known this has been going on for years. It's all about getting everything in order before you put your 10 application in.
I
And
know,
that's why
but
it
this
was objected
particular
to.
police administration has asked of us more detail than any other administration we've so far dealt with.
Thank you.
It seems to be minute sometimes, in fact, seeking reasons to object.
If there are no further comments or questions,
As it says out that the applicant
Just wanted to check that there was no violence that you had to deal with last year. No, thank you.
As it says, the applicant as it gets the last and final say. Can I say one last thing? It says in the rules that the app, whatever happens, the app in the
Yeah, but it's kind of reversed because he's made the application with the hearing, so
Yeah.
they're the applicant in this situation.
Okay. Can I say one last thing? No. Okay, it was only that I did want to say that we don't normally reach this late stage because the pre-application and previous dialogues have made the time we've applied for the event later than normal. I'd like to point out to the panel that we have no chance of appeal because you can't appeal within 5 days, and today would have been the last chance for any appeal. So we've got no appeal facilities. And I'd like just to make the point that we have lots of people waiting to come to our event, which isn't like, oh, we're begging you to have an event. We've had a 20-year continuity, and we're hoping that somehow we can continue with that. And maybe create more dialogue with the police in future. And I say, like, we have the local toilet vendor we've used since 2010. We've ordered the toilets off of him weeks ago. He's waiting to bring them on Tuesday. That the proprietor of the local shop, he's actually spoken to us. He's prepared himself for our event because he sold so much extra stock last year. This is the proprietor of the second stage. Just spent 6 weeks walking up from the country. Staff and volunteers arrange their lives accordingly. In the main stage, he's loaded with its white marquees, loaded onto a lorry in Wales, waiting to come down. And
I think
I have made
I think,
errors.
to be fair, this is all in your notes. That you
It is,
submitted
yeah. And I'd
today.
just like
So
to
thank
say
you
that,
for that.
If
PC
it rides
Gibb,
on errors and details I have missed out, that the errors I may have made in application and any details missed out, I feel that they don't prove the event to be lacking in safety. Thank you.
Thank you. PC Gibb, did you want to respond to anything said just then?
No, just to clarify, there are still points that haven't been covered by Mr. Delaney. He's covered a lot of historic events and how it's been gone without issues, but there's been no comment about my issues of fencing off the site from any lorries or any dangerous farm machinery. There's been no clarification on any first aid qualification and DBS check. There's no evidence of that still. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back and thank you for your patience while we discussed this afternoon's events. Our conclusion then is we acknowledge and welcome the police complaints premises on the complaints on the premises and public safety. We believe the relevant issues have been answered. And we are concerned at your late presentation and lack of information within that application. A lot of this morning's debate, possibly even the objection, could have been avoided had we had that information with your application. On this occasion, we are minded to not issue a counter notice. You are therefore free to run your event. Thank you.